friends, we can all see that many white bloggers have millions of followers. Please support me too, because my followers are still few. Black bloggers also deserve to be famous. Raise fist medium dark skin tone. My friends, let's unite and lift each other up. Please press subscribe button and like. Walter Johnson, a 73-year-old retired postal worker, sat quietly in his modest home in Riverdale, Georgia, reflecting on the past few months. The once peaceful neighborhood had turned into a battleground of corruption and injustice, and he found himself at the center of it all. It all began with a series of traffic stops by Officer Brian Keegan, a local cop who had turned his badge into a weapon against the vulnerable. Walter had been pulled over multiple times for trivial offenses, each time losing money to the officer's corrupt practices. The first time it was a broken taillight, the second, a supposed speeding violation. By the eighth stop, Walter had lost nearly $600, money he could not afford to lose, especially after the passing of his beloved wife, Linda. Walter had always been a man of principle, raised to respect authority and avoid confrontation. He had spent 42 years delivering mail through rain, sleet, and snow, earning the respect of his community. But as he watched his neighbors suffer under Keegan's oppressive tactics, he felt a fire ignite within him. His grandson, Marcus, a passionate law student at Emory University, urged him to take action. "Granddad, this isn't the 60s anymore. You have rights," he insisted, his voice filled with urgency. With Marcus's encouragement, Walter met with Jessica Powell, a civil rights attorney known for her fierce advocacy against police misconduct. In Powell's office, Walter learned he was not alone. 6 other elderly residents had reported similar experiences with Officer Keegan. They devised a plan to gather evidence against him, using specially marked bills that would track his illegal activities. Walter felt a mix of fear and determination as he agreed to become a part of the operation. He knew that standing up against a corrupt officer could have serious consequences, but the thought of his community suffering in silence was unbearable. The day of the sting arrived, and Walter drove along Keegan's patrol route, his heart racing. He was nervous but resolute. When Keegan finally pulled him over, Walter followed the script they had rehearsed. The officer approached his car, demanding his license and registration. Walter's hands trembled as he reached for his wallet, ensuring the marked bills were visible. "You roll through that stop sign back there," Keegan lied, his voice dripping with condescension. Walter knew he had come to a complete stop, but he remained calm. "I'm sure I came to a complete stop, sir," he replied, trying to maintain his composure as the encounter escalated. Keegan ordered Walter out of the car, and Walter complied, feeling vulnerable and exposed. The officer's hands roamed over his body, and when Keegan found the marked bills, he pocketed them without a second thought. "I'm confiscating this cash as evidence," he said, smirking. Walter's heart sank, but he knew the FBI was watching. They had recorded everything, and the evidence would be irrefutable. After the encounter, Walter returned home, a mix of humiliation and satisfaction coursing through him. He had stood up to the officer, and now the wheels of justice were in motion. As the investigation unfolded, Walter faced increasing threats. Anonymous calls warned him to back off, and his home was vandalized. One night, he returned from volunteering at the community center to find his front door ajar and his belongings ransacked. The violation of his sanctuary left him shaken, but he refused to be intimidated. With the support of his community, he organized a gathering of other victims, each sharing their stories of harassment and theft. They formed a coalition determined to expose the corruption that had plagued their neighborhood for too long. Meanwhile, the FBI's investigation revealed a deeper conspiracy involving not just Keegan, but also Chief Victor Hargrove and several other officers. They had been targeting elderly black residents to drive down property values in neighborhoods slated for redevelopment. The evidence was damning, and public outrage grew as the story gained national attention. Walter's story was picked up by local news outlets, and soon, journalists from larger networks began to take interest that Walter's health began to deteriorate under the stress. But he remained steadfast. He recorded a powerful video statement from his hospital bed, detailing his experiences and calling for justice. The video went viral, inspiring others to join the fight against corruption. People from all walks of life began to rally behind him, sharing their own stories of injustice and demanding accountability. from the police? As the trial approached, Walter found himself at the center of a movement. The community rallied around him, organizing protests and demanding accountability. Signs reading "Justice for Walter" and "End Police Corruption" filled the streets of Riverdale. The tide was turning, and the corrupt officers were beginning to feel the pressure. On the day of the trial, Walter sat in the courtroom, flanked by Marcus and Jessica. The atmosphere was electric as the prosecution laid out the case against Keegan and his co-conspirators. Walter took the stand, recounting his experiences with unwavering courage. He spoke of the fear he felt during each traffic stop, the humiliation of being treated like a criminal, and the pain of watching his community suffer. The defense attempted to paint him as confused and vindictive, but Walter stood firm. "I know the difference between a legal traffic stop and a shakedown," he declared, his voice steady. The jury listened intently, and as more victims testified, the evidence against the officers mounted. Each story added weight to the case, painting a picture of systemic abuse that could no longer be ignored. Finally, the jury returned with their verdict: guilty on multiple counts. Walter felt a wave of relief wash over him. Justice had been served, and the corrupt officers would face the consequences of their actions. The courtroom erupted in applause, and Walter's heart swelled with pride. He had not only fought for himself, but for all those who had suffered in silence, in the aftermath. Walter established a scholarship for black students pursuing law degrees, ensuring that the fight for justice would continue. The Riverdale Police Department underwent significant reforms, and the community began to heal. New policies were implemented to ensure transparency and accountability, and community members were invited to participate in discussions about policing practices. As Walter visited Linda's grave, he placed a bouquet of yellow roses and whispered, "We won this one, Linda, not just for us, but for the children and grandchildren coming after." He felt her presence with him, guiding him through the challenges he had faced. Walter Johnson had become an unexpected hero, proving that one person's courage could spark a movement and change a community forever. In the face of injustice, he had refused to remain silent, and in doing so, he had inspired others to stand up for what was right. His story became a beacon of hope, reminding everyone that even in the darkest times, change is possible when people come together to fight for justice. As the years passed, Walter continued to advocate for his community, attending town hall meetings and speaking out against injustice. He became a mentor to young activists, sharing his experiences and encouraging them to stand up for their rights. The legacy of his fight against corruption lived on, inspiring a new generation to carry the torch of justice forward. Walter's health improved as he found purpose in his activism. He often visited local schools, sharing his story with students and encouraging them to be vigilant against injustice. "You have the power to make a difference," he would tell them. "Never underestimate the impact of your voice." One day, while speaking at a community event, Walter met a young woman named Sarah, who had been inspired by his story. She was a recent graduate with a degree in social work and was passionate about helping marginalized communities. Walter saw a spark in her that reminded him of his younger self. They quickly formed a bond, and Sarah became a key ally in his advocacy efforts. Together, they organized workshops on civil rights and community organizing, empowering residents to take action against injustices in their own lives. Walter found joy in mentoring Sarah and others like her, knowing that the fight for justice would continue long after he was gone. As the anniversary of the trial approached, Walter was invited to speak at a national conference on police reform. He stood before a crowd of activists, lawmakers, and community leaders, sharing his journey and the lessons he had learned. "Change is not easy," he said, his voice strong and clear, "but it is necessary. We must hold those in power accountable and ensure that our communities are safe for everyone." The audience erupted in applause, and Walter felt a renewed sense of purpose. He knew that his fight was far from over, but he was no longer alone. The movement he had sparked was growing, and together, they would continue to push for justice. In the month that followed, Walter's health began to decline again. He faced new challenges, but his spirit remained unbroken. Surrounded by family and friends, he continued to advocate for justice, sharing his wisdom and experiences until the very end point one evening. As he sat in his favorite chair, Marcus by his side, Walter reflected on his life. "I never imagined I would become a symbol of hope," he said softly. But if my story can inspire even one person to stand up for what's right, then it has all been worth it. Walter Johnson passed away peacefully, leaving behind a legacy of courage, resilience, and unwavering commitment to justice. His funeral was attended by hundreds, a testament to the impact he had made on his community. People from all walks of life came together to honor his memory, sharing stories of how he had inspired them to fight for their rights in the years that followed. The changes Walter had fought for continued to take root in Riverdale. The police department implemented community policing initiatives, and residents felt safer knowing they had a voice in the process. The scholarship he established flourished, helping countless students pursue careers in law and social justice. Walter's story became a part of the fabric of Riverdale, a reminder that one person's courage can spark a movement and change a community forever. His legacy lived on in the hearts of those he had touched, inspiring future generations to stand up against injustice and fight for a better world. As the sun set over Riverdale, a new generation of activists gathered at the community center, sharing ideas and strategies for change. They knew that the fight for justice was ongoing, but they also knew that they were not alone. They carried Walter's spirit with them, a guiding light in their pursuit of a more just and equitable society. Dear listeners, did you enjoy today's story? If you are interested in the fate of our heroes, we will definitely prepare the next parts. Subscribe, because your attention and feedback are our greatest source of inspiration.